Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I think I'm Val. And is today Monday? I'm not
It
sure.
is Monday. Monday, you're in the right place.
Okay.
Val's in the right place. All of you that are watching, you're in the right place. So,
Is anybody else confused about where they are right now? Like, it's just been going on for so long.
everything has felt very the same. It just mixes all together.
It's Groundhog Day.
Right?
Yeah. Somebody mentioned something about, clear back in March when we were doing this or this. And I'm like, that was a long time ago. It was only a few months ago. I said, no, March was like 50 years long. Like it was.
Last week felt like a month. Like there wasn't anything wrong with the week. It just felt like forever.
Yeah. And I think when all of this first started, most of our lives being turned upside down for, reasons. I guess YouTube doesn't like it when we say the reasons, so we won't say the reasons. But when all of this happened, like March for us was a very dark, like overcast month. And I thought, this is just making it worse, like making the depression worse, that and an earthquake. It just all made everything worse. But I think the heat has made it really bad too, because it is just excruciatingly hot. And
it is really hot lately. Yes.
And none of us can like really go anywhere. Like it's just we're hot and sweaty in our own houses instead of being hot and sweaty out and about or like at a pool or whatever. Like it's
And look, I like hot and sweaty as much as the next guy, but sometimes it's a little much. All right.
Wasn't that your band name back in high school?
It was.
Please welcome to the stage, Hot and Sweaty.
We did a great cover of the Weird Al parody of Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. That was totally our thing. Hot and Sweaty, Smells Like Teen Spirit. It just went together. It worked really well. Really, really well. Val, you shared an article with us that Amazon is picking up a series on A League of Their Own.
They did. Literally the day after we did our episode, I talked about it on the air on B98.7 because the news had just come out like right after we did our episode. And so, they'll be doing a series on A League of Their Own, and they're going to have storylines in there from exactly what we wanted to see. So they're going to have all different women and all different leagues, including the Black League, White League, Women League, like all of that stuff. It's going to be really interesting to watch.
So the first thing I want to say is thank you, Amazon, for listening to our show. We're glad we could help you with some ideas for some content. For the rest of you, if there's a movie that you'd like a reboot scene or like a series picked up, let us know. We'll talk about it on air. Amazon's obviously listening. We'll see what we can get done.
Green light.
We'll see what we can get done. Tracy, you are on tomorrow. That's what we do. You are on tomorrow for Cast Off. Val, you won in my book last week.
I agree with
Patrick Beatty did great, but I liked a lot of your picks. He had some good picks too. Both of you had. Jack Black though. Jack Black as Animal was.
Yeah, like Craig, what was that like off the wall, most ridiculous? Like you have to go digging for that choice.
So, if you guys have not. And I don't mean you guys because you guys have, but if our listeners haven't gone and listened to Matinee Heroes, they do this same thing on their show. And when he and Alan pick, they do pick from all of space and time and
obscurity.
Like random, not random, but they pick a lot of celebrities from older movies and things like that I'm just not as familiar with. So I wasn't totally shocked, but I had no idea who the person was that he picked. Like I was like, no, Jack Black's way better. That should definitely be the case.
What's funny. If you listen to the after show, he asked us a little bit more about our picks, and then he asked how to.
Did we lose her?
I'm still here, right?
Here? You're back.
It froze for a little bit. So what did he ask you on the after show? It kind of started cutting out a little bit there.
So I was 1 point away from a tie, right? So if you go into a tiebreaker, then you have to do a double feature pick. And mine would have been Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I would have won. So if I could have just gotten that 1 point for the tie, but again, it was so close, and Patrick did a great job. I mean, when he threw Eddie Murphy in there, I never even thought about putting Eddie Murphy in that role, and that was a crazy good pick.
That was a great one. Yeah.
He did have some good picks. He deserved to win, but Val, you did a great job as well. So tomorrow,
I thought Val captured the heart of the characters a little bit better.
I agree. I think so too.
But Teigen nothing removed from Patrick.
The reason why I chose Chrissy Teigen is because Miss Piggy is like this sassy, sexy, like hardcore, in your face kind of character that you still love at the end of the day. But she's not the best singer and she's not the best actor, but she doesn't care. And I feel like that's Chrissy Teigen all the way. I feel like the person that he picked, I love her as an actress. I forget her name right now, but she was from Beetlejuice and
oh yeah.
Catherine that's right.
Yeah.
But I think she's fantastic. She doesn't have the sex appeal of Miss Piggy, but she's a great comedic actress.
See, I was thinking Bette Midler.
Oh, Bette Midler would be good too. But I don't think that Bette Midler brings the same kind of sex appeal that Val's talking about. I mean, not that she is in her own way.
Young Bette Midler, man.
Tracy, you've got South Park tomorrow on Cast Off. We are wishing you the best of luck.
Dude,
Tracy reached out to me and was like, I'm going to have to pick your brain, Jake. I'm like, nope, sorry. I am zero help. I do not know. And
major props. So I reach out to you guys just to say I'm doing South Park, and I jokingly say I'm going to have to lean on Jake with his extensive knowledge of South Park to help me out here. And Jake, who is not your biggest South Park fan, he comes up with the best selection ever. And unfortunately, it's not one of the characters selected. And that is for Kenny. Who did you pick for Kenny?
Sean Bean. Listen, they're always killing Kenny. You got to put Sean Bean in that role.
How is Kenny not on the list?
I was so going to use that. I'm like, I don't care. I am using that pick, and then he wasn't on the list. I'm like, Grr.
Yeah. But literally, the fact that they always kill Kenny is like the only thing I know about South Park. So I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch.
Do you know about Cheesy Poops?
No,
man.
I don't like. I think there's Kenny is. I know him. I know Cartman says something about respecting his authority.
My authority. And Cheesy Poops. Bring me my Cheesy Poops.
Yeah, I don't know.
Man, I need my Cheesy Poops.
Yeah. So the
I
best
used to
of
watch
luck
the first
to you.
3 seasons. The first 3 seasons, we watched it every Wednesday at my friend's house. We all went there. That was what we did on Wednesdays. Back when you could meet with your friends at their houses.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I got into South Park like when it first 3 or 4 years, and I haven't watched a lot since. I think that Matt and Trey are hysterical, and they come up with some brilliant stuff. Team America World Police is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Team America is great. Oh my gosh.
So Tracy, I gave you a compliment on the after show because they were like, Tracy is so well versed in movies, and you like so many great movies, and you're this you took film in school, you taught film, maybe he's not going to do well at this because, and I said, oh no, Tracy watches and loves horrible movies. This will be fine. He loves a lot of awful movies, so he's going to be fine.
I can watch Team America and Citizen Kane, and I can appreciate both.
Yeah.
You should remake. You should just put that into one movie. There you go.
Which is why I think a lot of people like our show. Like, we know what we like. We like a lot of different films, and we can talk about almost anything on the show.
I feel like I'm in a horror movie right now. Am I in a horror movie? Like, this lighting is a little bit kind of like...
It's kind of moody.
It's a little ominous.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just trying something new today, Val. It's all right. It's fine. It looks good.
I need lighting that reflects my mood.
I mean, it doesn't scream hubba hubba or anything, but it looks good.
Mic drop.
All right. So this month we are talking about sports movies. And this week we are talking about, it's not a movie per se, but it's a documentary series. It's on Netflix. And it's The Last Dance. And this came out right, I mean, as everything was happening, it came out on ESPN, and it basically chronicles Michael Jordan's career as well as his last season as a Bull, the last dance, right? The last time that he won a championship. I think looking back on it, what he would probably like to be his last season in the NBA and forget that he ever played for the Washington Wizards and that any of that happened.
Were they the Bullets at the time, or were they the Wizards?
No, they were the Wizards when he was on.
Are they? Okay.
Team. Yeah, like they had just gone through the rebranding, so they were like the really ugly, like light blue Wizards uniform, and everyone was what? Yeah, because Bullets was obviously not what they wanted to be anymore.
Jake, was it hard rewatching this series or watching this series happen?
So some parts were like the last couple of episodes where they get into the series with the Jazz, and how everything went down there. It was like, I was a big Jazz fan during that time while the Jazz were, I'm still a big Jazz fan. It's not like I stopped caring about the Jazz. But watching Carl and John go to the finals, 2 years in a row, it was huge for our community. It was huge for the Jazz. It was huge for the fan base. And both years, I mean, the Bulls just killed us. I mean, they didn't blow us out of the water necessarily, but like just beating us, and just showed they were the better team all the way around in the playoffs. And I was nervous to go back and relive that. But honestly, Michael Jordan is such an interesting figure in sports history and in the history of the NBA. Like, you can't not be interested and intrigued. Like, if you enjoy basketball, you have to respect who Michael Jordan is and what he brings to the game. And so I don't think it was hard to watch. It was intriguing more than anything. And honestly, I was a big proponent for a long time that Jordan pushed off against Brian Russell and everything else. But then watching it, I was like, no, he really didn't.
He really didn't.
It wasn't a penalty. It shouldn't have been a foul. And they were just a good team. So,
well, because I know, like, I'm a huge college sports fan. I love college basketball, love college football. And when Utah went to the championship and played against Kentucky and we lost, we were leading to like 5 minutes left and then kind of fell off and they beat us. Like, that's still painful for me. So I didn't know like how painful it was for you to go back and rewatch, because I don't think I would watch a series about that season or that game. I want to just kind of forget about that.
Yeah, and I think that's one way that that college and professional is different, right? Because you've got the series, and so there were some great moments that the Jazz had in the series, and then they ended up losing the series. Whereas in college basketball, like losing it in the last 5 minutes, and you lose everything, and it's done. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, and like I said, it's such an interesting cast of characters, using the term loosely, and it was such an interesting look into his career, because I think you have a tendency to look at Michael Jordan, who in my opinion is probably the greatest basketball player of all time. It would be hard for me to pick someone better than him. And you have a tendency to think he did it all by himself. And this series really kind of shows how he didn't, even though if you asked him, he probably still would say he did do a lot of it on his own.
I mean, but he even says in the documentary that he doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, yeah.
But we can safely say that the man has a healthy ego.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. You really have to be in that line of work. But I was really happy to see that he was such a hard worker. When they talk about when he, leaves college and how he was, he showed up at the colleges and he's like, I want to be the best basketball player that's ever played here. And then he works his butt off. And then, then he goes pro and he shows up, and he doesn't show up with a big ego. He shows up as somebody that just wants to be a part of a team. But then he realizes that world that is basketball at the time, and maybe it's still that way now, I don't know, but drugs and girls and fame and all this stuff. And he's like, that's not me. Like, I just wanted to hang at home with my mom and then, go and work out. And he pushed his team to be better because he wanted to work with the team. If he was, super all about himself, he would have just made himself better and played his game on his own. So I really liked how it showed that about him, because and don't hate me, but I was a Bulls fan because I was a Blackhawks fan. So I was automatically a Chicago fan, because when I was younger, when all this was going on, we used to have the Golden Eagles, but we didn't have a big hockey team. So I liked Golden Eagles, and then I had to pick a national, and that was, the Chicago Blackhawks. I loved them. And so then I automatically pulled on to the Bulls. That was also my team. The colors were my colors. Like, it's the Disney colors, red, black, and white for all my things here. Yep. But also that's where I found my love for the game, because I did like watching basketball and going to basketball games. I had all the hats. That's how I found my love for Nike, was through Michael Jordan. It was so interesting to see that he didn't even want to go talk to Nike. And his mom was like, they called his mom. Like, he didn't want to go be with them. So they called his mom, and she's like, look, you need to go listen to what they have to say. And then he wears Nikes, and they totally rip his feet from end to end. But, then they worked it out. But so it's just interesting to see behind the scenes of this is all happening when I was in junior high and high school. So you don't see all that stuff. I just saw all the cool clothing and the games and just do it and all that,
Spike Lee was directing commercials for Nike.
Yeah. Well, and I think the Nike Jordan relationship is so interesting because, like he said, like the two companies that he was really interested in, Converse said they weren't interested in him right off the bat because they had all of the other existing stars. And like so Converse was the official shoe. Oh yeah, that commercial was awful that they showed. I was like, but it was the 80s. Like, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
And then he said he really wanted Adidas. But Nike was this kind of upstart company. They had done track shoes. They hadn't really gotten into basketball shoes. And let's be honest, before Jordan, like, basketball shoes and sneakers in general were not the big commodity that they are now. Yeah. I mean, he really made that happen.
Yeah.
And Nike went all in on him. They were willing to pay him more than any of the other companies were going to, give him a signature shoe, all of this stuff that nobody really did at the time. Mm-hmm. And man, did it pay off for them. I mean, now
that's the standard.
Yeah, that's the shoe that people want. Like, when you come out and you go pro, you want your own signature shoe with Nike.
Right.
Yeah.
And then others.
LeBron is the biggest selling one right now. If you've got the LeBron shoe, that's the one. So.
Yep, exactly.
Now, how many Nikes do you think you have?
I have 6 pair right now. I did have 8, but 2 of them got stolen. So, yeah. This is the thing though. I wear my Nikes until they are not wearable anymore. I'm not like, I take really good care of them, but I also wear them. So like last year, I actually got rid of a pair of Nike and they were my favorite. They were like this green and white pair that I'd never seen before. No, they did not smell great and they had holes in them. And so, but it's my dream to have like the big wall of Nikes in the little plastic tubs that you see like on all of the athletes when you walk into their closet. That's like my dream. I don't even need clothes in there.
You're like the toys from Toy Story. You got to take them out of the package and play with them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you got it. Yeah. I had one pair of Air Jordans growing up. Like, it was 1 year that's all I wanted for Christmas was a pair of Air Jordans, and my grandparents got them for me. And bless them, my grandparents are awesome that they did it. But it was a year there was like a white pair, there was a black pair, and then there was one that was like a cranberry and white color. And like, I wanted the black ones, maybe the white ones, but nobody wanted the cranberry ones.
I did. What are you talking about? Do you know how much those shoes sell for now? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I get all of that now, but as a 4th grade boy, none of the other boys, they all had the black ones or the white ones. And my grandparents, bless them, they got me the cranberry ones, but I didn't care. They were still Jordans. They had the little holes on the tongue that you could pull up the tongue with they were awesome. They were great shoes.
I think young Jake's going to look cute in these cranberry shoes.
Honestly, I think those were the last pair. Like, that's what they could find. That was what was available because it was such a hot. I mean, they were always hot every year. That's what everybody wanted. So you weren't cool if you didn't have Jordans.
I'd wear the heck out of them.
I did. I wore them every day. Like, listen, they were still Jordans, and I was still excited about that. But anyway,
not as excited as you could have been.
Man, it makes me sound really ungrateful.
No, it doesn't. I still can't believe like some of the grudges that are being held between all these players, because I loved how they're interviewing all of these players, and it's so great. But the fact that there are still a huge amount of grudges when they're like, hey, Michael, we've got, this video from your mom reading a letter. Hey, Michael, we've got a video from the player
Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
Who
I did know back in the day. Like, he was a fantastic player. But like they're like, he's like, I don't care. Whatever he has to say now was not what he thought in the moment. So I don't even want to hear it. Like, he didn't even want to watch the video. But I still can't believe that team did not shake their hands. Like, that's a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it goes back to his competitive spirit. And one of the parts that stuck out to me the most is when he's talking to, is it Bill Wennington, the center? I think it's Bill something.
Bill, I think it was like, Wennington or Wellington. I don't know.
Something like that. But he's talking about how Jordan and Pippen and maybe Rodman would play high stakes poker back in the back of the plane. And they're up front playing blackjack for like $5. And Jordan comes up and starts playing. And Bill's like, what are you doing up here? And he goes, I want to take your money too. And so, I mean, that part that stuck out to me.
The Isaiah Thomas thing was interesting because I remember hearing about that as a kid, and like, I collected the basketball cards. Like, I loved everything NBA when I was a kid. So I followed all of the teams, and there was always this rumor that there was this big rivalry and almost animosity between Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas. Like, I remember hearing the rumor that on the 92 team, that Isaiah Thomas wasn't on the team because Jordan wouldn't play with him. And I, like, thinking about it before I watched the documentary, I think there was a point where I reached as an adult where I thought that was probably all like inflated in my head, and it was all rumors. Right. Like, you hear stuff and you build it up in your head, and then you watch this documentary and no, it wasn't at all. Like, he really, like, to this day doesn't like Isaiah Thomas.
Can't stand him.
And he said, he said it wasn't his fault that he wasn't on the 92 Dream Team, but that was the one player that he asked about whether or not he was going to be on the team. And they knew that if Thomas was there, Jordan wasn't going to be there. And who would you rather have on your Olympic team? I mean, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was just really fascinating.
I really enjoyed learning more about Scottie Pippen. Like, I didn't know a ton about him. And he was they were a team. They were an intricate part together. And I do love how Michael Jordan was like, we really just wanted to be like Larry and Magic. Like, that was the goal, is to be that big of a team together, those two, that duo. And the fact that they respected each other so much, and they still respect each other so much, that to me was a great part of the documentary, was learning more about that.
Yeah, I thought Pippen was often in Jordan's shadow. I mean, everybody was in Jordan's shadow, but I'm with you, Val. It was very interesting, and I was actually kind of glad that they spent more time with Pippen, it seemed, than with Rodman. And I'm like, because I know Rodman
is not a good interview.
I know who he is. I know what he's going to say, and a little bit of him goes a long way. So I was really grateful that they did focus more on Scottie.
Well, and I think it's great because I think Pippen's one of those great untold stories in the NBA, just because he was always kind of a sidekick to Jordan, but in his own right was an incredible player. And like, you talk about an organization, like, just, it was great to see that sports organizations even back then would screw their players as bad as they do now. I mean, like the contract that he had that was like this long-term 10-year contract. He's like, I mean, I needed the money. I wanted the sure deal. So I signed it. Like he could have gotten so much more money if he'd gone somewhere else, signed a shorter contract, all this other stuff. But he wasn't in it just for the money. He wanted the sustainability. He wanted the consistency, and honestly, playing with Jordan, I think he knew it elevated his game.
Right.
Well, and I think that like the kind of team that they had this team where they stuck together, they played clean, they played fair, and they stuck up for each other. His coach was his mentor. You know, when your coach says, as much as I want you here to win us games, you need to get to the NBA. Like you need to go professional. And he basically helped him go when he could have kept him and sucked every last juice out of him so he can get booster money. Like it was, I think he took that with him. And then when he stood up, when he got to the Bulls and he stood up for his coach, because he said, I want to play with my coach. I'm not going to play with somebody else because you guys think we're done as a team and you don't think he can go very far. Like, this is my team. This is who I'm going to play with. And I thought that was really incredible for him to do because, you know, he could, if he was just in it for him, he didn't need to do that. And it was funny because I was watching this series and watching Ballers at the same time. So I'd watch a couple episodes of Ballers and a couple episodes of this. And it was such an interesting, like, back and forth duo. If you haven't watched the series Ballers yet and you love sports and like behind the scenes, you should definitely watch it.
Yeah. I think it was really interesting to see the evolution of Michael Jordan as a player too. Coming in as a young gun, trying to find his place. And then, you know, the first year that they had Phil Jackson as a coach and how much Phil Jackson really helped him. Like Michael Jordan was always a super talented player, but he became a great player when he learned how to elevate and build his team up. And that's when he became one of the greats, honestly. And Phil Jackson got him there, you know, when he told him, you know, yeah, you could take the shot every time, but look at what you're doing. You're drawing the defense off and this guy's open. We can do this together as a team, and helped him kind of see that vision. Jordan became unstoppable at that point. That's why
early in his career, he would definitely be double teamed or triple teamed and he'd still be taking the shots. Yeah. Because he didn't trust the guys around him. But later in his career, when they started winning and winning championships, it's because he did exactly that, Jake. You're right.
Well, and that's why you've got the great story with John Paxson and the shot that he had, and then Steve Kerr and the shot that he had, which I loved the big celebration after Steve Kerr had hit that shot. And he talked about, and Michael came to me and said, shot's coming to you. And he said, okay, I guess I've got to belly out again, Michael. And like, there's like great, good humor between them. And, but yeah, that's when he became really good, was with Phil Jackson and helping him see that vision of, you're not in this alone, and that's going to make you even better, and made him a better leader.
So now I want to ask you guys, because this movie would never have been made without Jordan's express consent. And to me, it was definitely shaded to be pro Jordan. And I get that, but I kind of wish that we'd been able to go behind the curtain a little bit more. It felt very safe at times.
See, I thought it was going to be way more about Jordan than what it was about. I thought I was just going to turn on a big fat commercial about Michael Jordan and how fantastic he was. And it was just going to be all about how he was so great and how he did it on his own. And then when they start sharing stories about all of these people that made him who he was, and how all these different players are also talking about all these other players, like when they're saying, you know, Pippen had raw talent coming in, like he was such a good player. And so I do think, yes, it is about the Bulls and how he carried the Bulls, because he did. Before Michael Jordan, the Bulls were nothing. But I do think I got more than what I thought I was going to get. I do think, I understand what you're saying. I do think that it's still okay as a person of his stature to not want to share everything.
Oh, I get that.
I feel like I got enough that I was like, okay, like I know more about his life and his surroundings than I ever thought. Cause I thought it was going to be a puff piece. I really just thought it was going to be like, let's kiss Michael's butt all through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that.
There was a lot of stuff that they glossed over that I think that I don't want to say investigative because that's the wrong word, but in a more kind of fast pitch instead of softball type of documentary filmmaking they would have gone into. Like they just kind of go, oh yeah, I went to Atlantic City or Vegas for the weekend. The night before a big deal.
So no big deal. It's not a big deal. I'm not addicted to it. I can stop it. I just choose not to stop ever and like take everybody's money on the plane. Like, but I don't have a gambling problem.
I'm betting against my security guards.
Yeah. On how well they control
maybe
a coin.
It's because I don't know as much as you know. So for me, I felt like I was getting a lot of information. I didn't know what questions they weren't asking or what they weren't covering because I literally just thought it was going to be a really fancy Nike commercial about Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I would have liked to have seen like a little bit more on the ownership and the management of the team, because that was really from the Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson perspective of, look, they told us we were done and Phil Jackson was leaving and that was it. And like, we didn't really get to see a whole lot from their point of view on the decisions that they were making and why they were doing it. I mean, it was a good organization and it was managed well enough that they won 6 championships. Like, but that last year they're painted out as the bad guys.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe they weren't, and I don't know, but that's the thing is we just get a really one-sided look at that particular thing.
Well, and Jordan has spent his whole career and his whole life on very carefully and artfully crafting an image of himself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I totally get that. And I felt like the documentary was almost a continuation of that. Like, we're going to tell the story that I want you to tell in the way that I want you to tell it, because I need to control this other stuff or else you're not going to get any access at all.
Yeah.
That was my only drawback. It's immensely entertaining. It's very interesting, especially when this came out and we had no live sports.
Right.
Yeah.
So to be able to watch this once a week and see old basketball games and hear reminisce, I'm like, I ate it up.
Yeah. Well, and maybe the owners and those, maybe they didn't want to say anything. Maybe they, they didn't want to comment. Yeah. I don't know, because they did get some of his enemies on there talking about him, and he was like, I don't want to effing talk to that guy. You know what I mean? So
I mean, they got Isaiah Thomas to make a comment, and then they showed it to him, and he's like, I don't really care what he has to say. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it definitely was very pro Jordan, but it was still fascinating to see and to get that behind the scenes look. I was glad that they covered who they did. I mean, I could have done with less Rodman just because, like you said, Tracy, a little bit goes a long way with Dennis Rodman.
It was very interesting to see how Michael and them dealt with him. Like, they knew that Dennis Rodman was, like this very different person. And for me, I really kind of respected that, because you're going to bring, he's a very talented player, but he wasn't like everyone else, but they knew he was talented. And so they were willing to deal with his differences so that he could be a part of the team, sometimes to Dennis's detriment. They probably shouldn't have allowed him to go so far, but there were things about him, as in like cross-dressing, being very experimental about his look, where at the time in sports, like, that was unheard of. And it's the biggest basketball team that's out there, and this team is saying it's okay for him to be experimenting with this stuff. Yes, they wanted to win games and make money, but I think honestly, like Michael said, like we let him be himself. Now, sometimes that kicked them in the butt, like when he didn't show up to games and they had to go get him from Vegas. But to me, I kind of liked that. But yes, I'm glad that they didn't give us more Dennis, because we've seen enough. Like, I've seen enough of Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
But to your
point, I think a lot of
Rodman
Rodman is persona.
Yeah.
I think he definitely puts on an act for the camera. That's the feeling I get.
I think a lot of that's him. I really do. I think that's genuine. Rodman just likes to do what he wants to do.
Rodman gonna do what Rodman gonna do.
Yeah. I loved, though, to your point, Val, when the reporters are interviewing Phil Jackson and they're like, isn't this a distraction that Rodman missed practice and then he's not here? Isn't that distracting you from the playoff series and whatever? And he just turned to me and said, well, let me clear this up. It's a distraction for you guys. It's not a distraction for us. We're so focused on the game. It's a distraction for you guys. And then they go out and win the series and everything's great. But I think my biggest struggle with Dennis Rodman is, at that age, Dennis Rodman was the bad guy and Karl Malone was the good guy. And I still can't see it any other way sometimes. I know that that's not totally fair. I mean, right down to they wrestled each other at a pay-per-view for WCW. Right.
With Hulk Hogan and Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah. Yep. Diamond Dallas Page and Karl Malone were the babyface, the good guys, and
the
Hulk
Diamond
Hogan
Cutter
and Dennis Rodman were the heels, and that's how it went. And anyway, he's an interesting character, extremely talented. I loved when he was describing how he would play, and he's like, and then I'd go over here and I'd get the rebound, and then I'd go over there and get the rebound, and then I'd do this, and then I'd do this. Like, okay, I guess that's probably how it works in his mind, but he was extremely, extremely talented, just amazing talent.
And the
whole team was.
It kind of reinforces, like, every company has the one or two people who are a complete pain in the butt to deal with, but they're extremely good at what they do. So the management kind of tolerates it and lets it continue as long as it's being productive. But when that production dries up, man, if you're being a pain in the butt and you're not producing.
Yeah. This is a good life lesson, kids, to the kids that listen to our show. If you're going to be a pain in the butt at your company, you better be really, really productive.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't be a pain in the butt and not productive, because then you just get fired.
Well, that's basically what they said about the general manager, right? What's that little guy's name that was the general manager that came over from baseball to be a general manager of a basketball team? And they were like, not a lot of people like this guy, but I'm not into hiring people that are likable. I'm into hiring people that, give us a product that can actually make things happen. And him and Michael Jordan did not get along, but other people throughout the documentary, a lot of people throughout the documentary was like, he was just fine. He hung out with my kids. He was, he was a good guy, but him and Michael, like they kind of butt heads. But again, like, he made things happen. He got things done. He did stick his foot in his mouth a couple of times, but.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was the one that hired Phil Jackson. He was the one that made some of the moves that got Dennis Rodman on the team, did things like that.
Right.
That show that he
wouldn't
was
have been the same without
general manager. But I think he and Jordan butted heads because he thought his role as a general manager was to be in charge of the team and run the team, and Michael Jordan thought that was his job.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, that whole exchange between the two of them, and they go back and forth several times, and they have clips of Jordan mocking him and like going on about how short he is and how stupid he is. And that was one of the few times I felt like they were able to kind of peel back the persona of Jordan and kind of, I was like, dude, okay, you don't like him, but you're kind of being a real jerk right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and his teammates talked about that too, when they would go to practice and everything, and he would really tear into them and stuff like that. And they were like, you can talk about whether he's a jerk or not, but the reality is he expects you to give your all the time. And if you didn't, then he called you on it. Yeah, but he did. Yeah. Right. He did the same thing. It wasn't like he wasn't out there pushing just as hard as he was expecting them. But if you made a mistake, he was going to call you out on it and tell you were stupid.
Yeah.
And you can talk about whether that works or not. It doesn't work in every environment, but I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves.
It worked here. Yeah.
So, I mean, if he didn't have the talent that he had and the work ethic that he had to back it up, it wouldn't have worked. You can't just be like, you've got to be able to back that up somehow. And even then you can argue whether or not that's the best way to be a leader. I don't know, but it worked for him.
Right.
So
it's kind of an old school versus new school mentality.
Yeah.
And that's more of the old school way of doing it, but
Yeah. And then really, again, I'm going to go back to.
Go ahead, Val.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to pull back to what Jake said. Shoot, now I've lost it. It'll come to me. Go, Val, take it. Don't.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
This is our 70th episode, by the way, folks. We've done this 69 times before.
I was just going to go back to Ballers again with that, because as I'm watching these episodes where they're getting into how, he's really started to take hold of the team and push them to be a better team so that they can beat these other teams. I'm watching Ballers and how they're being like very vocal and kind of tyrant. And that was kind of how football was at the time. And now they're getting into the new school, and these young people coming in are like, you can't use that language with us. You can't call people the P word. And, so I'm watching these things kind of, in sync with each other. And it was making so much sense that, old school versus new school, where I don't think that Michael Jordan's, I don't think that it would work now as well as it worked back then. But it worked.
But it's interesting because Jackson was one of the first to kind of take that kind of new school approach. So management was kind of more old school. The coaching was a little bit more new school. So that was an interesting combination.
Yeah.
But I do remember what I was going to say, Jake. I think you touched on this, is that what Jordan and the Bulls did was so revolutionary at the time. And things are so different now in the game with shoe contracts and with social media and branding. I don't think we're going to see another team pull off 6 championships in a span like the Bulls did.
I think it would be really hard. And I think the biggest reason why is because of the way player contracts are negotiated. Mm-hmm. And I mean, ultimately, you look at LeBron James, for example, like he has been on 3 different teams in his career, right? 4 if you count Cleveland twice. And I mean, he's been successful at every team, but the reality is it's hard to build a team like the Bulls in today's market and environment. Right. And I don't know. There's just not that same loyalty. I mean, you look back when Jordan was playing, Jordan played his whole career with the Bulls, except for
the Wizards,
with the Wizards, which was a weird thing.
And baseball.
But even baseball, he went to the White Sox that was owned by the same team, or the same owner that owned the Bulls. And you look, but like Larry Bird played his whole career with the Celtics. Magic Johnson played his whole career
with the Lakers.
John and Carl played their whole career with the Jazz, except for one season that Carl did with the Lakers because he wanted to get that ring.
Right.
Players don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not the way the game works. It's weird to have a player stick around, a good top shelf, high caliber player stick around on the same team, because the contracts are going to come and the money's going to talk, and they're going to go where the money is. I mean, and you can't blame them for that. Like, the market's going to pay what the market's going to pay.
Right. And you can't fault the guys for taking it.
But you don't see players playing as long as they used to either, because when Michael came in and he was this young kid, he was playing against guys that were almost in their 40s, and and the game has changed. It's way more physical than it used to be, and so players just don't play as long as they do anymore. And so you have to go where that money is when you can get that money, because you're only really playing for 6 seasons, it seems like, and then you're out because there's going to be some new 14-year-old coming up that's going to take your place. So and it's way more physical from my perspective than it used to be. And so your body just doesn't hold up as long as it used to be.
Yes and no.
It's more athletic, I think.
Yes, it's a more athletic game. It used to be if you would have like 1 or 2 really athletic guys, and the rest could just kind of be slugs almost. Yeah. Everybody on that, like when you have a guy like Giannis now who plays for Milwaukee.
Who are you? I'm a slug.
But a guy like Giannis who's like 7'2" and he's like running the fast break. I mean, LeBron James is like a linebacker, but he plays like a point guard. And they talk about this a little bit in the documentary too, that you used to be able to be a lot more physical, especially on defense in the game. I remember those Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, the bad boys.
every team I remember in the 90s that was going to compete in the playoffs and have a chance to win a championship, you had to have at least one or two bigs in the middle.
Yep.
And not just like a tall guy, like they had to be big. Like the Jazz went out and got Greg Ostertag and brought him on, the least athletic guy that's ever played basketball. Maybe. I don't know. And I can't say that. Look, I'm not athletic.
Really.
Yeah, but that's what his job was to sit in the middle.
Stand there and intimidate.
Nobody was expecting him to score. Nobody was expecting him to run the floor. It was you stand there, you play defense, and that's what he did, and he was good at. Mark Eaton's another great example.
Yep.
I mean, and that's what they looked for, and you don't see players like that anymore. The game has changed and gone away from that, but it is more physical and demanding in a different way because they are running the floor, and it's so much more fast paced.
Oh,
and some people say more entertaining, and I don't know, maybe it is. I mean, Rudy Gobert is a huge center, but he just doesn't look like he's got the same mass that Mark Eaton had.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, a lot of these guys now that are tall, or like I said, are super athletic. They're out on the perimeter. They're not just standing in the paint.
Yeah,
it's
a very different game.
It's a different game for sure. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Do you think Jordan would have been able to handle the game now with the social media and the extra press? And
I think so.
I think he would have. He's a pretty savvy guy. Yeah. I mean, how many really big scandals has he been in since he left the game? And I know that he's not in the same amount of spotlight that he was during the game, but I mean, I don't know that it really changes the amount of coverage that he would have had on him. I think you look at like a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant, and they both did relatively well in their careers and have done really well in their careers as far as managing that aspect of it. I mean, a couple of missteps here and there, but that's because they're human beings and human beings make mistakes. My mistakes just don't get broadcast to everybody in the world. That's a big difference.
I also think he surrounded himself with the right people. Like he was still very close to his mom, his old coaches, his mentors. He didn't
the guy
just
who was like listed as his best friend, who just looked like average Joe off the street. Who the heck is that guy? But it's his best friend. He hangs out with him all the time. It's his personal assistant.
Yeah, I don't think he changed much from when he left college ball to the NFL. I mean, he got a little more confident, as everyone does as they do better in their job. But it seemed like to me he didn't go all Hollywood, on himself. So I think that he would have been just fine. Honestly, I don't think he would have had problems.
I think the only difference would have been he would have made a lot more money.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he would have been all over that TikTok, Instagram life, man. He would have just killed it. Yeah. And if that guy did not miss a way to make money, like if there was a way to make money off of his name, that was and I don't mean to make it sound like he was like, cheap about it and he would just take any endorsement, but he found ways to do really good endorsements that made him a lot of money and really set that foundation. Yeah, he was very smart. And he set that foundation for players that came after, like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, and that they're more than just a basketball player. They are a brand unto themselves.
Right.
And I think that's amazing to see what they've been able to accomplish. You talked, Val, about the grudges that he held. And when they started talking about the Jazz, like when he talked about, like Brian Russell ran into me one time at a workout or whatever. And it was like, while he was playing baseball, and he's like, oh man, it's too bad you're not playing, 'cause I could totally take you. I could totally guard you. And I really would love to guard you and whatever. It's like, yeah. So when we played him in the finals, like I remembered that and I needed to show him that he
years later.
I'm like, dude, man, the guy does not remember, like does not forget anything. Like don't ever say anything to Jordan, because he will hold it against you. Just be like, oh yeah, you're the greatest, Mike. I love you. That's all you should ever say, or else he's gonna remember.
But I think he said it from the beginning. He set a precedence when he showed up to North Carolina and he said, I want to be the best person. I want to be the best basketball player. And so it's about being the best. And when you're about being the best and you're about pushing yourself, and there are a lot of people that want to be the best at what they do, but they take shortcuts to get them. And I love what he's, when his coach is like, okay, then he's like, you need to practice more. And he's like, I practice as much as the rest of these guys. And he's like, well, you said you wanted to be the best, right? And that probably stuck with him, so that when somebody says I could totally take you, even in jest, he's like, no, I want to be the best and I will prove it to you, And so, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not hurting anyone. But you're right. Like, there's no way that I would be like, hey, Michael, like, it's too bad you're not playing right now. Cause I
can see that. He's a rookie. Like, Russell's a rookie. He's talking to one of the greatest of all time. He's going to run his mouth a little bit. He's a young, cocky little guy. But Jordan, and he mentions this during the show a couple times, in that he would find things to motivate himself.
Yeah, he totally did.
If it didn't exist, he would make something up. Like, he would think that somebody slighted him when he didn't, just so he would have that extra drive.
He talked about in one of the final series against the Jazz, one of the things that motivated him was that Karl Malone won the MVP that year.
Yep.
That's totally not Karl's fault.
Right.
Like,
it is Karl's fault. Karl worked his butt off
hard
to do it.
And he earned it.
Yeah.
But like, so I had to go out there and show him, like,
I had to show him that I'm the number one.
Let me show you what's up. And now I'm going to beat your team in the finals. Like, he would find those ways, and that's why you just can't give him extra. Just don't, because he's already going to find enough on his own.
So, Jake, I'm curious your thoughts on food poison gate.
Okay, so here's the thing,
because this is one of those things that they just kind of mention and then move on.
So, one thing that I will say that I respected about Michael Jordan in that whole thing, because everybody else was kind of implying something, right? Like, it was food poisoning on purpose. Kind of a thing. 5 guys show up to deliver a pizza. Who has 5? I'll tell you who has 5 guys deliver a pizza. Some podunk pizza place in Salt Lake City when Michael Jordan is the one ordering the pizza. You betcha all 5 guys are coming to see that.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm coming on this. I'm coming on this delivery.
But one thing that I will respect about Michael Jordan is he did not, for the most part, imply at all that it was anything done on purpose. He said, I ate that pizza. I was sick the next day. It was not a flu game. It was a food poisoning game. And that's not necessarily like, you guys did this to me on purpose. Like, a lot of people kind of took it as, and some of the implications from some of the other people that they talked to. I think it's totally possible. I don't know what the pizza place was that he ordered from, but if it was open that late and it was the only one that was open in Salt Lake, it's probably pretty sketchy. And so chances are he could have actually really gotten food poisoning.
I was going to say, I know of one place right across the street from KUTV, just down the street, that's open late, that delivers pizza. And I could imagine that getting food poisoning. Yeah.
I know that when I worked graveyard shift a few years ago, we ordered pizza from a local chain, and I don't want to say the name because, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And the next day I was sicker than I've ever been. So, like, I get it. Like, you're ordering late night pizza. It's, you don't know.
It's like gas station sushi.
But I will say,
never do that.
Yeah, don't do gas station sushi. Bad idea. But I will say that's still one of the most amazing feats in sports ever. That he was that sick and came out and played as well as he did. Like, it was amazing. I remember watching that game and, like, bull crap, he's got the flu. That was them faking us out. But then you watch the footage and everything, and no, he was not faking it, and it was amazing.
He just found a way to overcome it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. I think he probably really did get food poisoning. I don't think it was anything nefarious or done on purpose.
Yeah.
I think the 5 people coming to see the pizza delivered were hoping to get a glimpse of Michael Jordan.
That's exactly what I think.
We're nerds. Like, Utahns are nerds when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, we are not a big city.
We're everything.
Absolutely. It's almost like we've got this, like, we want to be one of the big guys. I don't want to say it's like a Napoleon complex, but we want to be like, we want to be one of the cool kids. And so when something like that, it's exciting, and, like, we're all going to be nerding out about it. It's just the way we are. I'm sorry. Well, it's the same reason why In-N-Out Burger, when it opened in Salt Lake and you had lines around the block for miles to go to In-N-Out Burger, like, we just nerd out about stuff. It's who we are. I've accepted it.
It's Sundance every year, go up and see if I can spot a celebrity across the street.
Yeah. Cause they're,
Now, some people get to hang out with Jack Black during Sundance, but not all of us.
That's true. I love Jack Black.
I love him
my
too.
favorite thing about that story, Val, is that you've said he's a nice guy, and that just makes me happy.
He is a nice guy. It was like the best encounter ever.
I have heard that he is one of the most genuine guys in Hollywood. Yeah.
Jack Black.
I don't run often, but I ran with Jack Black.
Jack Black, if you're listening to the show in between the great videos that you're making on your Facebook and Instagram right now, like, we'd love to have you as a guest. Absolutely. I don't care what we talk about. We could just talk about you if you want. Like, just come be on the show.
Yeah, he's going topless in order to try and get people to wear masks, dancing around in his underwear. I love it.
Yeah.
He's just the most incredible. Like, I want to be Jack Black when I grow up. I'm getting there. I'm probably past. I'm past there.
You need a longer beard.
I
definitely need the beard.
Yeah. Let's give this a grade, because speaking of special guests and everything we need to talk about next week.
Yep.
But let's give this a grade before we do that. Tracy, what do you grade this documentary series, this docu-series, if you will?
This docu-series. I don't know if it needed to be 10 episodes. I think you probably could have gotten away with 8. There were a couple times it felt just a little long. Like I said earlier, my few minor complaints where I felt like it was very rose-colored glasses when it came to Jordan. They kind of put a soft filter on him, softened up some of the rough spots. I'd give this probably a B+. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great series. It's definitely worth checking out. If you haven't already, it's on Netflix now. It's interesting to see behind the scenes of one of the greats. Yeah.
Yep. It is on Netflix now. That is true.
And if you don't have Netflix, you can actually rent it on Amazon for like $2.99.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it was on ESPN, but you should just be warned that the language on it is not ESPN language when you're watching it. Like, if you're sitting down with like your 12-year-old son, because you're like, this was basketball when I was a kid, just be aware of the language.
Your 12-year-old's probably heard it in school.
You know your 12-year-old better than we do. We're not telling you how to raise your kids. You just need to be aware. Val, what would you grade?
The thing you call school. I have no idea what that even is. Yeah. I agree with Tracy. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But it gave me a lot. I don't follow basketball as much as you guys do, but I did play when I was younger, when all of this was such a big deal. And yes, I was 5'5" and I played center and I kicked butt at it. So you guys can all bite me, because I don't mind knocking people over that are twice my size. And my Jordans helped me out. So,
dude, you're feisty. I could totally see you taking on these other kids.
And it was Catholic school basketball, so those girls are just really rowdy. But I agree with Tracy that I feel like it could have been 8 episodes. It did feel like I was trying to push myself, to finish watching the rest. But I give it a solid B+. I super enjoyed it. I loved learning about all these things I didn't know about, and about these players that I really didn't know about, and behind the scenes, with Nike and all that stuff. So, I really enjoyed it. I think B+ for sure.
Yep. I'd probably give it a B, just because they did beat my Jazz at the very end. And so maybe I am a little bit more bitter about that than I thought. But I do think it was good. I think you should watch it. If you were a fan of the NBA during this time, if you're a fan of the NBA now and you want to see how it's changed, if you've heard the legends and the myths and everything else about Michael Jordan, this is a great introduction into that. And you should definitely, for that reason alone, he's one of those figures. He's up there with a Muhammad Ali type.
He transcended the sport.
Yeah. I mean, Babe Ruth, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan. If I was building a Mount Rushmore of basketball or sports figures, Michael Jordan would go on there. It would probably be like Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, Muhammad Ali,
Greg Ostertag.
Greg Ostertag for sure. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that seems to be the trend lately. People who don't deserve it all to be on a Mount Rushmore, asking to be on a Mount Rushmore, seems to be a trend.
I sent a softball and Jake just knocked it out of the park.
So, but speaking of Babe Ruth, next week, we are talking about a movie that has a lot to do with Babe Ruth. It was signed by baseball, signed by some lady, Baby Ruth. Babe Ruth? We are talking about The Sandlot. This has probably been our most requested episode since we've done this show. We are so excited to be doing that. Val, why don't you tell us a little bit about the special guests that we have lined up for The Sandlot?
So I'm very excited because we were supposed to do this episode for a while. We were supposed to do it last summer. It didn't work out. Then we were going to do it this summer with a lot of the cast and our good friend Marshall Moore, who used to be the film commissioner here in Utah and now is in charge of the Utah Film Studios. And he's a really good friend of theirs. But because of COVID, we can't really do all of that outdoor stuff and bring in a whole bunch of the actors. So Marshall Moore is going to be on here. He is a huge baseball fan. When you could travel and go do things, that was actually one of his big vacations of the year. He and his family would actually go and watch like preseason baseball when they would do when they would go, what is it? Practice, but it's not called practice. What's it called?
Spring training.
Yeah, spring training. They would go to spring training. Like that's what he would do for his vacation. That's how big of a baseball fan him and his family are. All of his kids play softball and or baseball. And then we're going to have a special guest from the movie on that I'm trying to bring up because I totally forgot the name. The actual name of the actor, but I can't find my message from Marshall Moore.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, I did put it in your guys.
Yeah, you sent it to us.
Mystery guest.
No,
the
Shane
mystery guest.
Obedzinski. Is, and he played one of the kids in the movie, Tommy Repeat, I think.
Yes. And he is so much fun. So I've already met all of the cast when they came out here for their last anniversary a couple of years ago. And they were so much fun. I got to interview them on B98.7. And this specific guest has so many great stories. So make sure you guys tune in, ask questions about the movie, about the guests. Marshall can kind of give you behind the scenes with, the making of this stuff. And then, of course, our special guest can tell you all about the cast, how they made it. Like they were all just a bunch of kids,
Right.
Yeah.
getting paid to play ball and chew gum and go to pools. And, it was all just a lot of fun. So it's such a fun movie to be able to cover.
Bunch of kids who got to spend one of the summers of their formative years in Salt Lake City, Utah. Every kid's dream.
They come back a lot.
I know. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say, so this morning I had The Price is Right on in the background while I was working, and they gave away a trip to Salt Lake City. 5 nights at the DoubleTree.
What was the price on that? 5 nights at the DoubleTree. Now that could get pricey. Now, is it the one out by the airport? Because that's real nice.
It's the one in the heart of downtown.
Okay, well that's better.
Yeah, I think it was like $4,000 or something. Okay. And this is from LA to Salt Lake. But I'm like, hey, we're big time. Come on.
That's right. We are big time. There's that Utah nerdiness coming out again. We're big time. We're a destination on The Price is Right. Before we
I do want to also mention that he was in My Girl as well, which was one of my favorite movies of that time.
That's right.
Yeah. So you can ask him about that as well.
We also want to give a shout out, if you guys have not seen on our social media, Utah Remote Con is coming up in about a month. This is a cool thing that we are putting together with our Soul and Droids family. Listen, we all like going to conventions. We all like doing panels at conventions, and we're trying to bring a little bit of that into your living rooms since we can't go to conventions right now. And this is a time of year when a lot of them happen. Comic-Con in San Diego just happened. FanX was supposed to happen next month, which is a big local one for us here. So we're trying to fill that void a little bit. And we are also trying to raise money for a good cause. So we are going to have set up so you can donate to the American Cancer Society, which is something that has hit very close to home for a lot of members of our Soul and Droids family. And I think for a lot of families in general. I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb at all. It's by saying most people pretty much hate cancer. It's like the worst. So we are fighting against it, raising money for that. You want to go to UtahRemoteCon.com to find out more details about it. You can also follow it on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll be announcing more and more guests. A lot of us will show up on those guest announcements because we're all going to be participating.
But we've got the Stolen Droids crew. We got Cutscenes and Cupcakes coming on.
We've got Multiplane, so we'll see Tyler on some things as well.
Yep.
But we've put the call out for panelists, and we've had quite a few people reach out to us already. So it won't just be Stolen Droids people; it'll be all sorts, and it'll be really awesome. So we are grateful to the community for reaching out to us, and we're grateful to you guys if you want to attend and check that out. It's free; it's totally free. We're just asking you to donate money to fight cancer.
And I used. When my wife was diagnosed 3 weeks ago with breast cancer, Jake, I used one of my swears on Facebook when it came to the bleep cancer. So, yeah,
you're allowed one swear a month.
Exactly.
Just so you know, Tracy, our swears that we use on the show do not apply to your personal life and your Facebook. And especially when cancer is concerned, you can use as many swears as you want because trust me, dude, that.
Now you tell me.
What do I know?
But now you tell me.
So use as many swears as you want. All right. So next week, big show, Sandlot. We will have more details about Utah Remote Con coming up. So please check out that social media. Please come back for Marshall Moore and Shane Obadzinski from Sandlot. It'll be an awesome show. We're really excited about it. Like I said, our #1 requested episode. So we're finally doing this. It just took a global pandemic to make it happen. We're finally.
No, we've wanted to do it. We've wanted to do it in a big way, but
yeah. So we are super excited. Join us next week, and until then, we won't see you at the movies.
Bye.